Hello everyone, welcome to session number 8. The poem continues here in part 2, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. So we are going to see the detailed analysis of the poem in this session. This poem is a contrast of two different ways of knowing, that is scientific learning through facts and lectures and personal experience through direct contact with nature. By the end, we will see why Whitman believed that while knowledge explains, experience truly inspires awe. So, the content of today's session is objectives. We are going to see the objectives, outcomes, pre-reading activities, about the author, purpose of the poem, introduction to the text, that is the detailed analysis, themes, recap, and multiple choice question. So let us start with introduction to the poem. So it is first published in Leaves of Grass in 1865. The poem contrasts scientific lecture versus personal experience of nature. Some of the themes are knowledge explains but experience inspires awe. The movement is from lecture room to silent stargazing. Some of the poetic devices used here are free verse, anaphora, imagery, and juxtaposition. So let's see how to read this poem. This poem is a free verse, one cascading sentence built by repeated openings. So it starts with when, everywhere, every sentence. So it contrasts the noisy lecture room to silent starry night. The movement here is the second-hand knowledge versus the first-hand experience. The shifting of the tone is fatigue and sickness to relief, wonder, and awe. Some of the key poetic devices used here are anaphora, cataloging, imagery, alliteration, juxtaposition, and enchantment. So, purpose of this poem is, the main purpose is to know the science and lectures, give us facts, charts, and measurements. But Whitman says facts alone cannot capture the mystery and beauty of nature. True wisdom comes from intuition, imagination, and direct experience. The poem reminds us that learning should inspire awe and wonder, not just numbers and data. So, just an overview of the poem is it begins with the speaker attending a lecture by learned astronomer. The astronomer explains the stars using proofs, figures, and charts. The audience claps loudly, but the speaker feels tired and sick. So now we shall go line by line. Please keep your textbook in front of you so that you can also read the lines when I read it. So I'm going to read first two lines. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me. Here the setting is a formal lecture hall full of facts and numbers. Whitman uses anaphora. Anaphora means repetition of when, and cataloging. Cataloging means that's a list of data to emphasize the monotony. So here, speaker attends a lecture filled with facts and figures. Learning is presented through data and calculations. So here, visual imagery is arranged in rows and charts. Line, when I heard the learned astronomer, meaning the speaker attends lecture by a highly educated astronomer. The setting is formal and academic. Let's see lines 3 to 4. When I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them. When I sitting heard the astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room. Science reduces the heavens to calculations. The audience applauds enthusiastically, but the speaker feels alienated. Here, the juxtaposition is noisy applause versus the speaker's passive sitting. The lecture focuses on measurement and analysis. Audience applauds, but the speaker feels detached. So, some of the devices here used here are parallel verbs, that is add, divide, measure. Repetition of lecture emphasizes routine. Juxtaposition is noisy applause versus passive listener. When the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, that is, the lecture foregrounds quantitative data, learning is organized and statistical. So it is a cataloging, means the list of accumulation, that is the proofs, the figures. It's a typical imagery used by Whitman. So visual imagery is, it's arranged in columns, suggested tidy rows of numbers and tables. So that's a technical diction, heightens impersonality and distance. Line 5 to 6. How soon unaccountable I become tired and sick, till raising and gliding out I wandered off by myself. Speaker feels weary and uncomfortable inside. So he leaves the hall, moving freely into open air. So he suddenly feels very. Ironically, the word unaccountable contrasts the science obsession with accounting and measurement. He leaves the hall. Verbs like rising, gliding, wandered, they create a sense of ease and freedom, contrasting with the suffocating lecture. So here some of the devices used as irony, that is unaccountable. It is contrasted with science accounting. Kinetic imagery, that is rising, gliding, wandered. Euphony is used, that is smooth sounds reflects freedom. So here the meaning of line 5 to 6 is the content is increasingly mechanical, reducing the heavens to calculations. Triadic verbs add, divide, and measure, the stress method and reduction. Parallelism in the verb series, light alliteration, divide. So 7 to 8. When I sitting heard the astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room. So there is a big applause in the lecture room. The talk is a performance, but the speaker is passive. He is immersed in the noise. So outside the atmosphere, but he leaves the hall. Verbs like raising, gliding. So some of the juxtaposition used here is passive listener versus enthusiastic crowd. Auditory imagery is much applause fills the space with sound. Anaphora continues. Repetition of lecture underscores intuitionality. So we have completed this. Let me move on to the next line. Looked up in perfect silence at the stars, meaning culmination, direct, wordless encounter with the cosmos of replaces analysis. So antithesis is used here, perfect silence versus much applause. Closure, the only finite full stop sentence ending, breath and thought revolve. Minimalist diction mirrors simplicity and purity of the experience. So Whitman uses several techniques here. So especially let us see some of the poetic devices he uses here. Free verse and enjambment, that is clauses flow across lines mimicking breath and movement. He has used anaphora. Anaphora means repetition. So in every sentence it starts with when. So it builds momentum and expectation. So cataloging, he gives lists of data, proofs, figures, charts to show accumulation and tedium. So he uses imagery, that is visual, auditory and tactile images. Alliteration and sibilance, that is mystical, moist, perfect silence, creating mood. So here there is a shift in the tone also, intellectual weariness to spiritual refreshment. Diction and syntax, archaic forms, inversion. Free verse, no fixed meter, no rhyme, organic structure suits the themes. So some of the takeaway points are knowledge versus experience. Facts explain but experience inspires. Limits of science. Data cannot capture wonder. Silence and awe. True understanding often comes wordlessly. Learner's freedom. Each person must find their own path to knowledge. That is the classroom connection, balance facts with first-hand observation. So in conclusion, so we will recap the whole poem now. The poem highlights the contrast between scientific analysis and personal experience of nature. Whitman suggests that while facts and figures provide knowledge, they may fail to inspire wonder and spiritual connection. The speaker finds more meaning in silent observation of the stars than in lectures and applause. The poem emphasizes that true understanding comes from the direct experience rather than second hand explanations. Whitman ultimately conveys that nature itself is the best teacher, offering peace, inspiration, and wisdom beyond calculation. So, balancing classroom learning with real world experience. So, facts are important, but they must lead us back to wonder. So, this is the takeaway for us. So, to conclude, he tells that nature itself is the best teacher. The astronomer lecture gave knowledge, but the stars themselves gave wisdom, peace, and inspiration. This is a reminder to all of us, don't just learn through books and lectures. Step outside, observe, and feel the world directly. So, this is the recap of the poem what we did in 2 sessions. Now, let's answer these 5 questions. So, after listening to the 2 sessions, you must be able to answer these very simple 5 questions. What does the speaker do after leaving the lecture room? He wanders outside into the night air. Question 2. What is the main contrast in the poem? That is scientific explanation versus personal experience. What best describes the night in the poem? That is mystical and moist. How does the speaker finally experience the stars? By silently gazing at them. Last question. What is the central message of the poem? Direct experience of nature brings true understanding. So look at the happiness on the face of the boy. So he is feeling so happy in the nature. So thank you all for listening. Whitman's poem reminds us that real learning is not just about facts and charts. It's all about feeling, intuition and wonder. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by data, step outside and look at the stars. You may discover more meaning in silence than in 100 lectures. So, hope you all enjoyed the session. So, see you in next session. Thank you.